We'll go ahead and call Fed and State to order, March 3rd, Thursday. First thing on the agenda, do we have some bill introductions by the committee? Not seeing any. Out in the audience, go ahead and step up. Sandy?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I would like to request bill introduction on behalf of the Alliance of Automobile Innovators, and the bill is RS 3239. It's an act considering motor vehicles, relating to autonomous motor vehicles and providing the use and regulation thereof.
Any questions? Any objections? The bill's introduced.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Swati, former Representative Swati, we'll call you, or former Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I have two bill introductions on behalf of the Regional Economic Area Partnership of South Central Kansas.
Let's do one at a time. Okay.
Yep. The first is number is 22 RS 3457, and it has to do with the district powers of groundwater management districts. The second.
Hold on.
Oh, yeah.
Questions? Objections? It's introduced. Go ahead.
The second, the RS number is 22 RS 3458, and it deals with withdrawal from those districts.
Questions? Objections? Go ahead, Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Withdrawal of who? Withdrawal from the district?
Entities that would want to withdraw from the district, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, objections? Not seeing any. It's introduced.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further bill introductions? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on, turn our attention to working some bills. The first bill we're going to work today is Senate Bill 394. Jason, you want to just kind of bring us back up to speed on 394? And then I have the first amendment of the day. So go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 394 is a bill amending one statute regarding the return of advanced voting ballots. Currently, those ballots can be accepted by the county election office up to the last delivery of mail by the United States Postal Service on the third day following the election. The bill would strike that provision and require all ballots to be received by the county election officer by 7 p.m. on the date of election, so by the close of polls. And there is a technical amendment to clean up some language in that subsection B, Mr. Chairman, if the committee would so choose to.
Okay, first thing, do we have any questions about the bill for Jason? Go ahead, Senator Fascadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason, so currently, even on an election day, so if I go to the poll and vote in person, so 7 o'clock is the cutoff time, but still those poll workers, when do they have to have those ballots delivered to the election office to be counted? So I guess I'm really wondering, changing the 3 days to that election day, what's the benefit? Or should that question go to the sponsor?
No, Jason.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the ballots that are actually cast in person on election day are transmitted. My understanding is later that evening to the county election office, and then ballots that are received by mail after election day are collected and included in the canvass of the election results. As to what benefit the underlying bill, provides to the county election office, I would defer to the proponents of the bill.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, why don't we go ahead and pass out my amendment, and then I'll let you go over the amendment, and then I'll explain what I did. This has got it all, right? Okay. ahead, Jason.
Mr. Chairman, the balloon that was distributed is balloon number 2 for Senate Bill 394. Also distributed is a brief bullet point summary of the provisions of the second page of that balloon, attachment A. What this balloon does would add a new section of law to the election code to govern the use of ballot drop boxes by county election offices. And a ballot drop box would be defined as any locked ballot box that is not located in a county election office or satellite advanced voting site. So this would be any remote ballot box located outside in the county. The first part of new section 1 will limit county election offices to only use one remote ballot box unless the county has a population of more than 60,000 registered voters, in which case the county may use one drop box for every 60,000 registered voters. The drop boxes can only be open and accessible to the public during those times when the county election office is open. However, there is a provision that on the date of the election, all ballots in a drop box must be collected and delivered to the county election office by 7 p.m. on the date of the election, and the box is to be closed after those ballots are collected. So the box would be closed prior to 7 p.m. under that provision on the date of the election. All drop boxes must be continuously monitored by an election office employee or by video recording whenever the box is open and accessible to the public. There must also be signage near the on the front of the box where the ballots are deposited that informs the voter on the restrictions on delivering ballots for other voters and the penalties for violations of that law. All video recordings must capture the voter's face when they deposit their ballot and must be preserved for at least 1 year and be made available upon request by a candidate. There's also provision for the Secretary of State in adopting rules and regulations to require that all ballots collected from drop boxes be kept separate from all other ballots received by a county election office during an election. The other provision in attachment A is an amendment to a current election statute regarding return of advance voting ballots that would require the ballot be delivered by personal delivery, by mail, or by deposit in a designated remote ballot box in accordance with that section 1 that I just reviewed. It also provides that if returning by mail, the voter can mail the ballot using the United States Postal Service or any other delivery service that provides the voter with a receipt indicating that the ballot was mailed and that allows the voter to verify that the ballot was delivered.
Okay, and the provisions where we had to move the dates up, did we?
That's a separate
Oh, that's second amendment? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll also just point out this one also contains a change in the effective date on page 1 of the balloon in the last line to make it effective on Kansas Register.
Okay. I think Jason did a pretty good job explaining. One of the things that I've heard from Secretary of State's office, we have really no policies on how the drop boxes are manned. So I've got a list of some of the other states and what they're doing. Tried to incorporate some policy in. That's what I'm doing here to create structure, to make sure it's done properly. We have proper cameras monitoring them, and people can review that to be satisfied. Put the criminal and what they can do so people know, you know, how many ballots they can drop off legally, what the punishment is. So if they're violating that, they have knowledge. I also, on the mail-in, I heard the opponents say that they can use the mail, but they couldn't use FedEx or UPS. Well, I'm a former UPS employee back in the 80s, and I'm pretty comfortable with the security they have and with the return. So I went ahead and added that piece in to give a little more access to be able to mail. I do have a second amendment that will expand the time period on the election day piece to add 3 days to the front end. And so, you know, when people say that this bill will shorten someone's opportunity. We'll put that 3 days back. It'll just be on the front end. And my mission here is to make election day, and to put some secure policy in place on the drop boxes. So I don't know. I will give the Secretary of State's office a second if they want to comment, even though this is kind of a new provision, but you know, I don't know if you want to comment on any of that, Clay, or not, so. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I don't know.
You look pretty excited.
Mr. Chair, the Secretary's position has always been that the legislature decides the policy and the counties, and we implement it. And you've heard testimony on the mechanics and various opinions on this. It's the will of the body. It will be done.
Okay. Well, that's my motion. I'll stand for questions, or hang on. I'll make a motion on the amendment, and do I have a second? If I do, I have a second. Senator Hildebrand. So I'll stand for questions. Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think under current law, if a voter is in line at a polling place at 7 p.m., even though the polls close at 7 p.m., they are still allowed to vote if they are in line. So how would this affect, I mean, I think we would have to clarify that, you know, if you're in a line of vehicles trying to drop off at a drop box, if the drop box has to be delivered back to the election office by 7 p.m., it would have to be made clear to voters that the drop box closes prior to 7 p.m., although if you were dropping off an advance ballot, I think under current law, you could drop off that ballot at any polling location and it still be counted as long as you were in line by 7 p.m. So I think we might need to clarify.
We can do that conceptually. We could put a motion. My intention is, I just don't want the ballots laying out there for 2 or 3 days.
Absolutely.
You know, when the polls close at 7, we could put anybody that's in line, then election person would, you know, anybody that's already in line would be able to still cast their vote, but anybody new after that, after 7, would not. So I don't know. But let's deal with this motion first, and then I would entertain that as a conceptual motion. Okay, you do? Okay. Any other questions? Senator Fasco-Doe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't know if Clay can share this, but so currently the drop boxes, what are their operational times? And then, Mr. Chairman, the sponsor of the amendment, I guess I'm just concerned in my district, a lot of essential workers work, you know, different shifts. And so just for clarification, you're saying that the drop box would only be available during the time that the election office is open? Because that would exclude some of those that work other shifts. And
That's how I read the amendment, yep.
so what's the current operational time of the drop box?
Senator, currently the operational time is up to the county. It's not regulated, except at 7 p.m. on election night, they must be locked and the ballots taken back to the election office.
Senator Hill, I'll let you make a quick comment, and then I'm going to go.
Clay, I wanted to catch him before I wanted you to, on that comment, the box is locked at 7 o'clock. What if someone is standing there in line to drop one in? What do they do?
Senator, the guidance we've given, if that were to happen, which I haven't heard of that, occasionally on a polling place, I know there's people in line, that the staff there, the sworn election staff, the bipartisan board that's picking up the ballots, would probably let it stay open for another minute or two to get ballots put in, just like they do at a polling place, but they'd have to make sure nobody's sneaking into line. And I know one county actually, to avoid that, had their people lock the box at 7 just to make sure nobody came running up, and they waited a while before they returned to get the ballots out, just to avoid that situation at night.
Senator Reichman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and boy, you did a lot of work.
Well, we were attempting to. We were just trying to You know, one of the things Secretary of State's office said they would, they'd be all right with some policy put in place. And so, you know, it's discussion. I mean, we can add this amendment, and if you
No,
got something, I'll
and I-
allow conceptual.
I understand, and I appreciate your work there. It's just, it's a lot for me to figure out, and then exactly how to process it. That's what, and how it affects a different one. And so, and I'm not saying that I'm necessarily against it. I'm just saying this is a lot for me all at once.
Okay.
But one question here is, and you could probably answer it, or Jason could. It says, a Dropbox can be open and accessible to the public during those times when the county election office is open. However, in the day of election, all ballots in the Dropbox could be collected and delivered. Okay, I got that. But do they, and then it says all Dropboxes must be continuously monitored by election official, or they can use a camera, that's what it says in there, that's what you're saying, because I know we've had different bills for different things. I wanted to make sure exactly, because, I mean, I see nothing wrong with having a camera there.
Well, I see the way that works is the Dropbox in the election, on election day, it'll have the person that's manning it, but the regular Dropboxes would probably have the cameras, but it's their choice, so.
Right, okay, and that's where I've talked to some of our county clerks, that are city, whatever it is, and that was one of, they always had a camera or somebody there. The only other thing on the day is that I do have a section that's in Seward County and Liberal, and that their mail goes all the way to Amarillo. And so sometimes it can take like a week. That's why a Dropbox is really great to have, so people can advance and work to get there. I understand that you're going to put you plan on putting 3 days in the beginning, but, and I'm not saying they can't adjust, because some people put off their vote, but that having that extra day afterwards, I think is a benefit. Thank you.
Well, you know, my mission here was, this was a bill dealing with election day, it needs to be election day. I tried to accommodate by starting 3 days earlier. I think that's the next amendment will have that, and that's my intention. You know, I like to get back to election day being election day, and tired of all these, you know, you think the election went one way, and next thing you know, there's 40 ballots, and, you know, this race is now different. Let's know that on election day. And I've been voting my whole life. I don't think I've missed maybe one or so local elections. You know, but I mean, I don't know. I think people are at the point where they're tired of these, you know, it's almost like everything's just dragging on with elections. It used to be we'd have elections and then we'd move on to policy. And I think the people just, they want election day to be election day. And that was my attempt here. I tried to make it easier by adding a couple more ways to mail or multiple ways to mail. I tried to add 3 days. I think, you know, if you're, it takes a week to get to Amarillo, they're going to be late anyway, so they're not going to be counted. You know, these are things you got to know. I mean, if you're sending packages or whatever, it could take a week. Just like Christmas package, sometimes it doesn't get there if we don't send it early enough, and you know, so it's up to us to do that. Senator Fasco-Doe?
Just a quick question, and I don't know if Mike can answer this because so I've served on a elections committee my entire time in the legislature. With this amendment, the piece of voting election day affect, like in Wichita, Cedric County, we have a couple of days prior to the election, early voting is what we call it. And so people will go to the election office and vote early at the election office. Will this amendment, balloon amendment, affect that procedure? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hosher, sorry I missed you a second ago.
It's okay, no problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question. I think Clay would probably be the best person. On this first bullet point, each county would be limited to one drop box unless they have more than 60,000 registered voters. I'm curious how that compares against what we have currently. You know, would this mean there would be a change in the number?
Senator, we're actually still gathering data from
Okay.
counties from what Senator Hildebrand had asked. It's coming in, but since we don't actually control them, sometimes we have to wait a little. I believe that some of the smaller counties that have, most only have one drop box, so this wouldn't affect it. Some have two, so they would just only be able to use one. I was trying to do the math in my head. Some of the larger counties like Johnson or Sedgwick may have to use fewer drop boxes, maybe going from 9 to 5 or something like that. So there may be a small reduction there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
That's always up to Amendment 2. So.
yeah, well, and as pointed out, I mean, there's still data being gathered, and I'm with my friend Senator Reichman. There's a lot in here, and I have a lot of questions. And I just want to make sure I understand. I feel like we need to get that additional data, really look at. There's a lot of different points here that are combined. But like I said, it's a lot to work through as far as all these different factors. I would feel more comfortable being able to look at the data first that's being gathered before potentially voting.
Does anybody else have any questions? Senator Cluse?
I think I'm with Senator Reichman on this, and there's just a lot to process right now, and I'm for, you know, there's an old saying, don't fix something that's not broke, but yet there are things that I believe we need to take a hard look at. Perception's reality to people, whether it's right, wrong, and different. And so, I mean, this is a big thing, and just a couple of things to help me on this. Where did we get the 60,000 registered voters? Where did that
That's,
come from? I missed
well,
it.
I was looking at other states, or some states have 30,000 registered voters, like Florida. That's the number. There's different. I thought 60 sounded like a good number. I mean, it allows every county to have one, and then if you got more than 60,000 voters, you could have two, and you know, more 120, you could have three. I mean, how many do you need?
And then did I hear something about, on the video, making sure they get a picture of their face?
Yeah, I think it's important if someone's, you know, putting too many ballots in, you need to be able to get a clear recognition of who it is.
Yeah, I'm still processing a little bit here. And then can you remind me when the underlying bill, when will this take effect?
The register. It'll go in the register, so
I mean,
it'll be for the next election.
for this coming election? Okay.
Well, right now in statute, there is really no statute on the unmanned ballot boxes. They're, you know, and so there's, you know, Secretary of State, I guess, can require the counties to do it, but there's no policy in statute to do it. I mean, when I looked at all the states, and I was just trying to put some good policy together, but yeah. Senator Fasco, you got a question? Or are you done?
Yes.
Just, you know, just comment. I mean, I appreciate all your work, and I want to, I think we need to address different areas. I just want to be sure we're doing this right. And sometimes we get on a rush in things, but thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. It seems like we've kind of bundled a lot into one. So if you are successful in moving the bill out of committee, would you be open to a conceptual amendment to have Secretary of State's office do some public service announcements to inform voters of these changes?
Sure. I mean, I have no problem with that. I mean, I'd only expect it. I mean, that could be, we did give them latitude on the policy on some of it. We could definitely put that in there conceptually. Senator Hosher?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. If I'm thinking this through, then again, I think a lot of us are still processing things. With the effective date then potentially coming up and just kind of guesstimating based upon the numbers are here, I mean, we could potentially be taking out ballot drop boxes in Johnson County, is what it sounds like, based upon the numbers. Or I guess we just don't really know, which is
Well, I
probably why we
don't
need to
know how many
process.
drop boxes. We've requested that, Senator Hildebrand did in the state, and we're still, I don't believe we've gotten that information back. Is that right? I mean, do we know how many drop boxes we have in each county? And so, I mean, I don't know personally how many drop boxes. Go ahead, Secretary Clay Barker, Secretary of State's office.
No, Mr. Chairman, I just got a text from Brian Caskey that says it's almost complete, and we'll be able to tell you how many drop boxes in each county and where they got them from, how long they've had them, and some details of how they use them. And we realize the urgency of that, so we're reminding the few holdouts to get it in.
Sure. Senator Longbine, go ahead, and then I'll go to Senator Reichman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of points. Number one, based on my district, I would feel much more comfortable if the drop boxes were allocated based on 30,000 instead of 60,000. I have two counties that are above 30,000 but not above 60, and so that would give them the flexibility of having at least two drop boxes. My other two counties are considerably below population-wise, so it wouldn't affect them. But and then I'm also a little bit concerned about the face recognition. What happens if I'm turned sideways, or if I put my ballot in backwards? Does that mean my ballot doesn't count? Are they going to go in and try to figure out which ballot I dropped?
No, I don't think that's what that means. I think the camera's just supposed to catch the front side of whatever you're doing there.
Okay, but if it doesn't, we're not talking about trying to remove a ballot from someone.
We're not going to remove any
Didn't get a
ballots.
face.
I don't think any ballots can be removed. I think every ballot that goes in that box will have to be counted. You know, if someone committed a crime, then that's part of putting the disclaimer on the box of how many you can put in there and what the penalties are. But there's no vote that goes in the box, my understanding, that can't count. So, I got Reichman actually next, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I want to say that I do really appreciate the work and the thoughts and what all you got here. I mean, you've been obviously thinking a lot of this area on here. I just want to go back and say that I mean, to me, this is a complete new, obviously a new bill. And normally, and we've had testimonies on almost every part of this. I understand that, pros and cons, okay. But I would feel more comfortable if we opened this up and had people come and have, actually speak on these issues, whatever, just because I don't know how all this is going to filter on down. Anyway, that's my
Sure.
thought. Thank you, sir.
Senator Straub?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think under current law, a lot of these things are up to the discretion of the elected county clerk or county election officer. And I absolutely agree with the intent to secure our elections, but I want to be careful because our county clerks and election officers are elected by the people that they most closely serve. So, and I don't want to accuse our county election officers or county clerks of any impropriety, but I also want to make things easily understood statewide so that we don't have this patchwork quilt of different voting regulations. I am just a little bit concerned about the 60,000 number, and more concerned with a Dropbox that's not manned or not video surveillanced. So I think it's the public perception in order to increase the voter, I'm trying to think of what the word is. No, like the voters' confidence in the security of our elections, in order to improve voter confidence and make sure people are not voting because they're not confident in the security of our elections. I would support this, but I am also cautious about taking away that those duties from our county clerks who are elected, and they are elected to carry out the duties of making sure our elections are secure. Does that make sense?
I guess, yeah, I'm trying to figure all that out, but the thing I guess I'd say is right now, it's up to them if they want to man them or not, or put a camera on them or not. This would make them do that, but the 60,000 number is a number I put in there. I'd be willing to retreat to 30,000. That'll give Longmine a couple of extra Dropbox, and I wanted to throw a number in there. I wasn't for sure of the right number. That would probably, I guess, give Johnson County a few extras even. But I can retool this amendment to some of the comments here, and go ahead, Senator Straub.
Could I maybe suggest that the county be allowed to have a Dropbox, as many as they would choose, as long as they are either manned or that they are either under video surveillance? Like, it would be up to each county's choosing, as long as they are providing the security for the box.
That's something I'll think about. Senator Hildebrand, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to, my reading of this is on the, I know there's some concern about facial capture of the video surveillance. It just says it has to be positioned. It doesn't say it actually has to capture it. So I just want to make sure that was understood, that there's nothing that says that face has to be captured per ballot. It just says that the camera has to be positioned. So.
Senator Hosher?
Again, I'm going to stick with my friend Senator Reichman here in the request that, potentially if there's a different bill put together, that we open it for hearings, because I'm all about, making sure we have processes in place. And I get what you're saying too, in regard to, county clerks have some autonomy as elected officials in making decisions. So like I said, I'm all about coming to some agreement on processes. But I do feel like we just need to have some of that critical information.
We've had 2 weeks of hearings, and I'm got one more election bill, and that's the last one I'm hearing this year. Quite frankly, I've heard all I'm going to hear on election bills. And a lot of the stuff that was incorporated were comments from people that testified on both sides. So plenty of time to ask questions on them comments, and a lot of people did, and I tried to incorporate them into amendment. And, I've done way bigger bills and way bigger amendments than this. So, I'm going to retool the amendment a little bit and try to incorporate some of the concerns, but I'll be back on Monday. And if you guys got questions you want to ask the proponents and opponents, there's you can see in your packets who they are, and get with them people and further try to secure them comments. I will let the Secretary of State's office make a few comments but I'll try to clean this up. I'll at least take it down to the 30,000 level, and I'll think about Senator Straub's comment, but go ahead. Senator Fasco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to leave you with this thought of, even though I live in inner city urban areas, traveling with Leadership Kansas and back in the day working with former Secretary Chris Kobach, So I was saying I worked with Secretary Chris Kobach at the time and traveled with Leadership Kansas. And so those rural areas, rural counties like Montgomery and Independence and Coffeyville, they have such a wide distance. I believe they need more drop boxes. And so take in consideration of that as you're looking at the 30,000 or 60,000.
Senator Longmire, I'm good with working this bill today. If you want to make a motion to.
I would offer a substitute motion that would remove new section A that would replace the 60,000 number with 30,000.
Okay. Second. And so then everything else would be the same? Are there any questions on that motion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, nay? It passes. Okay, so this amendment's passed with 30,000. Senator Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the work that you did on your amendment, but I still have some concern about a Dropbox just being monitored with a video camera, and so I would like to add a conceptual amendment on, if you're looking at the amendment that Senator Olson, the Chairman Olson, handed out on subsection B, new section 1, subsection B, in the second line where it says election office or be continuously monitored. My conceptual amendment would strike or and add and. You would have double security that way. And then to change, also to strike, and I think the 7 p.m. deadline is important, to allow people to drop their ballot in at 7 p.m. I think.
Why don't we take them separate. And then we'll do your first one. So change the or to and, is that?
Correct. And if that's adopted in subsection D, the language would have to be corrected to match what that is.
Do we have a second to that motion? Hold on. Do we have a second to the motion? Senator Peterson, seconds. Now we can take questions. Because if there's no second, then we just move on.
I just want to clarify. So Senator Hildebrand's motion is that it has to be manned by a person and video, regardless of if it's in the county clerk's office, you're going to require these small counties to also have video surveillance of it?
Not inside a county clerk's office, but if it's outside of the county clerk's office.
So basically, what his amendment would do would man the ballot boxes, and that's what we're voting on. Is there any? Yeah. Senator Longbine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as I understand the amendment, it would require it be manned and videoed regardless.
That's correct. We're voting from my amendment. Originally it had or, one or the other. Now both have to be done by changing this. So Senator Reichman.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I would be voting against this amendment. I think the cost and for the local government there, and if you got a video, I think that's still going to be okay. The Secretary of State's office, they stress a lot of time there wasn't so much of a problem in Kansas, but there was many other places in the United States with drop boxes, and they are helpful. And I think this would take them away. So I would be voting against this amendment. Thank you.
I'm going to let Senator Hildebrand. I think it's pretty simple amendment, so we understand it. Go ahead.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you can do a quick Google search on ballot boxes being tampered with. There were several that had someone caught them on fire with advanced ballots in there. Just because you have a camera up, that camera's not going to stop somebody from vandalizing or catching your ballot boxes on fire and your ballots in there. So this would ensure that if you drop your ballot into that drop box, that you can be rest assured that that ballot then is going to make it to the election clerk and be counted. And that's the reason for this.
Thank you for clarification, but my understanding that has never happened in Kansas. And if you're going to have that manned or do all this, the cost would be so difficult for the local government. Here's another thing we're passing without passing along money along for them to do this. Thank you.
Okay, I think, go ahead, Senator Hildebrand, and then I think we're going to vote on it. Go ahead.
I think that as legislators, and the way I approach legislation is you're not reactive, you're proactive. You don't wait till something has happened to pass legislation. You know there's a possibility this could happen, and if you don't want that to happen, you're proactive and you pass the legislation to try to help prevent it, not react once it's happened. So, thank you.
Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against nay? No. It fails, I'm sorry. Now, why don't we do your next amendment? And I got one more amendment myself, changing the 3-day. So go ahead, Senator Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe this one will be a little bit more palatable. This one is changing from the collection office before 7 p.m. to match what's currently at a election site, so a polling place.
So if someone's in line, they would then be able to cast their vote, put it in the Dropbox. That's what we're talking about. Correct. Okay. Do I have a second? Senator Longbine seconds. Questions or comments? Senator Hosher.
Yeah, I'm sorry, could you just give clarification on that?
Basically, what, you want me to do it or you?
I can do it.
Go ahead, Senator Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So currently, the way the amendment was adopted, that a drop box has to be locked prior to 7 p.m., and those ballots have to be to the election office by 7 p.m. So this amendment will strike that and allow it to be, the drop box will be open till 7 p.m. or the last person in line that is there.
This covers.
Just like if you went to a polling place to vote.
Senator Hosher, you got the floor. You got to follow up, or you good?
Yeah, no, so does it change?
Or if you're in line, you get a vote.
No, by striking the previous language, then it's just that.
Senator Straub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we need to clarify that that remote box would need to be manned by an election worker, an authorized election worker, in order to ensure that, the transfer of who picked up the ballots and then who transfers them to who? Because I agree with Senator Holscher that do we need a hard cutoff time of when they have to be received by the office then?
I'll let you explain it. Jason, go ahead.
My understanding is there are already procedures in place for the transference of ballots back to the county election office, requiring representatives from both major political parties, escort those ballots back to the county election office. Mr. Barker can correct me if I'm wrong, but
Is that correct?
that's my understanding.
You can just say it.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's correct. There always has to be a bipartisan board of 2 people. Some counties even have a sheriff's deputy go with them.
Okay. Senator Reichman, did you have a comment or question?
I don't know. I can't remember where we were on this.
Well, you're definitely being honest.
I know. I do appreciate the Secretary of State to come in because we're trying to do good legislation and good work. And I appreciate the work that, people are saying. It's just, I'm just trying to do it right. And I know that when you have, my question, I think, was on drop boxes. Are we having long lines for people election day drop on I just can't imagine that.
Well, sometimes at, 6:59, there could be more than one car in line, and if the second car is behind the next one or the third car, they're in line to vote. If that first car wasn't there, they would have voted. So it's kind of like Black Friday sales in the old days. About an hour before, they'd always come out and give you a tag, because if not, what'll happen is 5 minutes before, everybody will cut in line. And this is a way, it assures someone that's in line that would have been able to vote, but someone's in front of them, they get their opportunity to vote. So, yeah. Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We got to remember that in 1E, the Secretary has the authority to, Secretary of State has office has authority to adopt rules and regulations to enforce this section to make it work.
Yes. Senator Frasco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as I understand the Hildebrand Amendment, it's to do exactly what we do at a voting location. If you're already in line before 7, you get to vote. So if you're in line at the Dropbox before 7, you get to drop your ballot in the Dropbox. If that's correct, Mr. Chairman, I'll be supporting the amendment.
That's what it does. Any further questions or comments? Not seeing any. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Against, nay. It passes. Now, I have one more. It's the 3-day one, and it's just, I'll let you finish that up. Or you want to explain that real quick, and then I'll. I know it's a lot to. Just tell them where the new.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, balloon number 3 is amending 3 additional statutes. And what this does is it extends the early voting, the advanced voting ballot period from the 20th day to the 23rd day of the before the election. And you can see that on page 3, attachment A, page 3. You can see the dates from 20th to 23rd, 20 to 23. And then to coincide with that, the amendment also extends the time period for applying for an advanced voting ballot by 3 days. So extends it from 90 days to 93 days. And that particular statute. And then it also extends the period for the cutoff for voter registration. This is attachment B, so that you cannot process voter applications later than the 24th day prior to the election. So basically just bumps the pre-election timeline up by 3
more
days.
And so it bumps everything by 3 days. So it's just basically trying to give everybody 3 more days, that they don't have waiting, because we're trying to do election day is election day. I'll move my amendment. Do we have a second? Senator Hildebrand? Are there questions or comments? Senator Reichman?
Thank you very much. I would be interested with the Secretary of State's office. Would they have any problem get the information out, or they have any problems, particularly with changing this to 3 days? Does this trigger anything, or getting things out and so on to the counties and so on, if that's okay, Mr.
Go ahead.
Chairman?
Mr. Chair, it's an admin note. Brian Caskey's going to be here shortly because I have to leave. But the Secretary of State wouldn't have a problem getting this information out to counties. We have a pretty consistent training program and weekly conference calls with them, and we send it out notice-wise to them. I don't know how many voters might be confused. I don't know if voters pay that much attention to the fine details of the law until it's election time and they look it up. But getting it to the counties would not be a major issue.
Senator Reichman? Or, I'm sorry, Senator Longbine?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason, on attachment A, page 2, section J, is that inserting another bill that we worked yesterday?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, it's probably amending the same statute that was in the bill that you worked the other day. Although this may also actually fall under a different statute from what was worked yesterday on the confirmation of voter registration. I think it is, but I have to double check. But that is not, if the statute is being amended by two different bills, we often try to run a reconciliation bill at the end of the session to reconcile.
I understand that. It's just Section J appears to me to be a insertion of a bill that we've already worked.
No, that's existing law. Right?
That is, okay. Thank you.
Any further questions, Senator Fasquedel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarification, so the 3-day allotment of time is now prior to, as opposed to towards the end, and is this just for requesting advance ballots, or is it for casting your vote? What is it?
It's for both. Applying for an advance ballot, you would get an additional 3 days prior to the election to make that application, and you would get an additional 3 days to return your advance voting ballot prior to the election. So you would get 23 days prior to the election as opposed to current law, which is only 20.
So for casting.
For the casting the ballot, yes.
And requesting.
Requesting, you would
advance
get
ballot.
an additional 3 days to submit your application. So instead of 90 days, you would get 93 days to apply for an advance voting ballot.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Cluse.
Just for clarity, so you're basically reversing.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing.
And then.
I didn't want anybody to say I didn't give the 3 days back.
Okay. And then for I'm a little blog on this. For the mail-in ballot then, or post day, it doesn't matter, it has to be there. Election day is election day.
At 7, yeah.
Okay, so those.
And you've got multiple sources. You could use FedEx, you could use the mail, you could use the Dropbox, you could use UPS. You know, I'm giving you more options in the same amount of time.
And then as far as, I think maybe the question came from Senator Reichman earlier about getting the word out. And Secretary of State's.
They would be able to do that. And Clay said that pretty much.
Yeah, okay.
Senator Reichman, I can always.
You're getting tired of hearing my name. When I was in Germany in a service, we voted by, mail, and so sometimes there's a problem in getting back on election day at 7 o'clock. So I was wondering if we have any provision or if anything is taken care of for overseas or especially military.
That's federal law that governs military ballots. This would have nothing to do with that. Is that correct, Jason? So federal law governs the military.
Right, but what I was saying is that we wouldn't necessarily still have all the votes in that day. There will be some, that was what I was trying to clarify too. Just let you, okay, thank you.
I'm following along there. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So thinking through that, and thank you for bringing up the military individuals, because their ballots may not be received in time, and we do have the federal law that allows the 3 days additional. Then my concern is, does that put us in jeopardy of litigation because we are going against federal law that is out there and putting something in place that is different from that?
Military ballots would still be governed under federal law. They would still have the 3 days. Is that not correct? I mean, the military ballots would still have what's governed under the federal law. So we're not changing them at all.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but at the heart of that concern, though, is that we would be potentially putting in policies that differ from federal level, whether we're talking military ballots or not. And I believe we just got an opinion out from the AG that part of an election bill passed last year was unconstitutional. Like I said, there's so many, and we keep coming up with so many different questions on each step of this process that, like I said, it does concern me that we would potentially be opening up ourselves for litigation in that regard.
There's other states that have similar laws, so. Senator Fasquedo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Being that Brian Caskey is here, if he could answer this question regarding, so again, in Wichita, we do early voting. How does this 3-day prior to, we wouldn't even need the early voting then so as I understand this amendment, originally it was eliminating that 3-day, but the Olson Amendment puts the 3-day back in the beginning. So how would it affect, like in Cedric County, we do a 3 or 5 early day voting? Can you elaborate of how that might affect what we currently do? Especially, Mr. Chairman, since counties do everything a little differently. And thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I answer her question? And my name is Brian Caskey. I'm the Director of Elections for the state of Kansas, and I work for Secretary of State Scott Schwab. To answer your specific question, I've literally read it like 2 minutes ago, so please allow me a little grace. But my understanding is it doesn't change anything other than move everything 3 days backward on the calendar away from Election Day. So it won't impact any county's current policies and procedures other than just shift it forward or backward 3 days away from Election Day. That's my very initial reading. So that's my answer.
I concur, and does the revisers concur? Yeah. Okay, Senator Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And not a question, but maybe a clarification. I believe the good senator from Johnson County, Senator Holscher, said the AG issued an opinion. I was wondering if she had that opinion because I've not heard of an opinion being issued by the AG.
I think it was just like 3 or 4 days ago, wasn't it, in the newspaper about one of the cases from a law passed last year that had some issues similarly?
That was not an AG opinion. That was a AG conceding that not the whole bill, but the trying to limit advanced ballot applications from out of state would violate the First Amendment of the Constitution. So it wasn't an AG's opinion. It was just one tiny section of that bill. So, okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify. You said AG opinion, so I want to make sure.
We've talked about this quite a bit. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against, nay? It passes. Okay. So are there any other amendments? Okay, sure. I'm going to let Jason, I'll make the motion. Do I have a second? Second. Peterson seconds. Jason, why don't you explain the amendment? This is just a technical amendment.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is a technical balloon. Given the change in policy to require advance voting ballots be received by 7 p.m. on the date of the election, the language preceding that requirement in subsection B, lines 13 through 23, is now unnecessary because that speaks to ballots being postmarked by Election Day but received after Election Day. And those ballots would obviously not be accepted and counted by the county election office because they were not received by 7 p.m. on Election Day. So that language can be stricken in keeping with the policy change in lines 23 through 27.
Okay. Questions for Jason? This is his amendment, so. Okay, no questions. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Against, nay. It passes. Okay. Do we, Senator? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, so being that we know mail goes from Topeka to Kansas City and then mailed out and so forth, when we were in ethics and elections and did we give some counties additional time with that understanding? How did we fix that so that mailed by the requirement from the Secretary of State's office or your election committee or county saying, you know, your advance ballot needs to be requested, mailed back by this time so that your vote can count? How did we fix that? Because I know myself and Senator O'Shea, we did a mailing from Secretary of the Senate, Corey, and for certificates. And both of us requested at the same time, and we didn't get our certificates until session started. And so, how did we fix that?
It's my understanding the legislature fixed that when they passed the current version of the law in 2017. There was no exception or treating counties differently. The solution the legislature passed then was to move the deadline to 3 days after Election Day to account for that. But there was no other change done by the legislature to account for rural versus urban or the delay in postal service delivery. So that was the solution, was to push back to the 3 days. That's my understanding. There was no other carve out or exception for votes cast by mail, depending on where you are in the state.
Okay. Do we have a motion to pass out 394 favorable for passage as amended? Oh, that's right. We got one more move. We want to, what bill number is it? 2056? Okay, we want to remove the contents of 2056 and add the 394 contents as amended. And I'll make that motion. Make it a substitute bill. Do I have a second? Senator Hildebrand seconds. Question or comments? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Against, nay? No. You guys want to be recorded? It passes. Okay, record Hosher and Fascadeau. Anybody else? Okay, this is out and on its way. Yes, Senator Longby. Oh, that's right. I've just made the motion to put the contents in. Thank you. What was that number again? Okay. I'll make the motion to pass out 2056 as amended, as a, latitude? Okay. I will pass 2056 as a substitute bill and give the latitude of the reviser to make any technical amendments necessary. Do I have a second? Second by Senator Peterson. Any questions or comments? All in favor, please sing. Oh, Senator Straub, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you have the reviser quickly give a quick synopsis with those few amendments that are on it, please?
Go ahead, Jason.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the contents of proposed Senate substitute for House Bill 2056 would be Senate Bill 394 with the technical amendment striking the language in subsection B and then adding the provisions from Balloon 2 on the regulation of ballot drop boxes, changing the registered voter population number to 30,000 and having the boxes closed at 7 p.m. on the date of the election and allowing any voter who is in line to deposit a ballot to be allowed to deposit that ballot. And then the amendments proposed in balloon number 3 to extend prior to Election Day 3 days for the deadlines for applying for an advance voting ballot and casting an advance voting ballot and registering as a voter. And then changing the effective date to the Kansas Register and any additional technical edits the reviser needs to make.
And so I think what we'll do is wait until Monday. It's on now, I'm sorry. The revisor's got some work on another amendment he's got to do, so let's give him an opportunity to catch up, and we will work the other bills on Monday. Okay? We're adjourned.